Preso Money in Game. Top Most 20 Insane RPG Games coming out in 2026. Coming out, crazy. E chiudiamo la live con un video da gaming con i giochi che io voglio giocare nel 2026. Bellissimo.
Crimson Desert is a story-driven action RPG from Pearl Abyss, the studio behind Black Desert MMO. This game's been on people's minds for a long time now, ever since that first reveal back in 2019. What's wild is that it didn't even start as this kind of game. Early on, it was meant to be another MMO.
Non riesco a capire.
Over the years, it shifted hard into a single-player setup, still set in the Black Desert universe, just way more focused on story and hands-on combat. A lot of the hype comes from how big and busy this world looks. We've seen huge open areas, crazy draw distances, and a ton of systems layered on top of each other. Trailers have shown riding dragons, gliding across the world with stamina-based movement that feels very Breath of the Wild inspired, and fighting massive enemies, including giant dragon-like constructs and monsters you can actually climb during combat.
Cioè, perché il gioco sembra che non è RPG, non hai le scelte, cioè nel senso è solo tipo Zelda. Adesso che ci penso può essere una hit. Dipende quanto non è noioso far le cose. Però per come ne parlano loro dicono che hanno creato un engine apposta per il gioco, di solito quando fanno così è crazy. Ma non so se mi gasa, cioè sicuro mi interessa. Mi gasa solo quando lo provo. Hai capito? È sas. Cioè che non si riesce a capire, perché puoi fare davvero tante robe. Loro ne parlano come se è una roba tipo... Però questi è se il gioco e la mappa dicono che 2 volte Red Dead, 2 volte GTA. Calma fra. Fantasy però, puoi andare in giro con i draghi, con le cose. Non lo so, ti giuro non lo so. Il problema è che non parlano tanto della storia, cioè parlano sempre avrai tante robe da fare. Però in realtà è come Zelda, cioè se voi ci pensate Breath of the Wild e Tears of the Kingdom è così. Se loro ti dicono c'è una storia di fondo, però tu poi ti perdi nel mondo e quello che devi fare. Lo descrivono come il Planet Peace, poi non lo so.
It's clearly
Sicuro Day One per me. Cioè anche solo per il content, portare un po' di gameplay, capire, provarlo e capire insieme com'è e come non è. 100%. Se non lo rimandano dovrebbe uscire a marzo questo.
swinging for something big. I've had a couple of chances to play Crimson Desert at Gamescom in both 2024 and 2025, and yeah, it's impressive in motion. Combat feels solid, animations are smooth, and the scale...
È tutto quello che volevo, quando dicevo che vorrei un GTA ambientato ce l'ho già.
...is there. That said, those demos only covered small slices of the world. There wasn't much room to mess with side quests, NPCs, or deeper story stuff, so there's still a lot we just haven't seen yet. That's kind of where Crimson Desert sits right now. It looks ambitious.
Poi non crei il personaggio se non sbaglio, sta cosa qua un po'... è un malus per me, cioè un conto è The Witcher, cioè Geralt è famosissimo, cioè io me la gaso a essere Geralt, però questo, boh, non lo so.
It feels expensive, and it still has plenty of mystery around it. If it hits its current release date of March 19 this year and doesn't slip again, we won't have to wait much longer to see how much of this vision actually comes together.
Cioè, guidi i draghi, ma mai ci gioco col... No, non lo dico.
Gothic 1 Remake is one of those projects that has a lot of people excited and nervous at the same time. The original Gothic is a classic, and a big part of why people still talk about it is how its combat worked. It was slow, awkward, and honestly kind of rough at first, but once it clicked, it turned into this tense back and forth where timing, positioning, and reading enemies really matter. The remake is where things get spicy. The developers are reworking the combat to be more fluid and modern, and that's the main source of concern. People who've played the demo say enemy AI...
The Witcher 4 per me non esce fino al 2030, secondo me. E prima usciranno i remake di The Witcher 1, 2 e si abbonano un po' di gente e poi esce il 4. Questo è il mio parere.
Feels too passive and that fights don't push back hard enough. There's also talk that the parry system is too simple now, which could flatten what used to be a pretty demanding combat loop. For longtime fans, that's a big deal.
Questo io non ho mai giocato la versione OG, però sembra carino.
On the flip side, the devs are promising a much richer world overall. Areas that were empty before are being filled out with new dungeons, more lore, and better reactivity to player actions. The goal seems to be keeping the soul of Gothic while making the world feel more alive and less rough around the edges. The interest is clearly there. The game already has over 1
Cioè sembra bello clunky quel gioco qui, cioè non sembra uno di quegli action a caso. Cioè devi essere un bel nerd per giocarci a questo qui.
million wishlists on Steam, which is
Speriamo.
wild for a remake of a cult classic. If the team can balance modern design without sanding off what made Gothic special, this could end up being one of the more interesting releases heading into 2026.
Vabbè, The Witcher 3 io è il gioco che ho aspettato di più prima di Elden Ring, raga. Cioè i giorni prima di The Witcher 3 credo siano stati leggendari fra per me. Vediamo se ho la custodia. Secondo me no, eh. No, non ce l'ho più. Avevo una custodia di The Witcher 3 io che aveva tipo un errore di stampa fra Day One. Se la tenevo adesso chissà quanto valeva.
Lords of the Fallen 2 was officially revealed at Gamescom 20.
Ecco, questo, anche questo non lo aspetto, ma sono curioso di provarlo. Lords of the Fallen 2. L'1 purtroppo l'ho preso Day One, ci avevo creduto, ma non mi è piaciuto tanto. Anche adesso se lo riprendo in mano dopo gli aggiornamenti non è proprio così bello, secondo me. Però si fa giocare, cioè è un gioco carino. Col 2 spero che la facciano bene, anche perché loro secondo me dovrebbero imbroccare un po' di più il level design e un po' il combattimento farlo un po' più preciso secondo me. E poi ce l'hanno, perché sono belli deep. Però è un po' troppo, cioè vedi anche nel trailer sembra tutto estremo, cioè sembra tutto un livello finale di un altro gioco. Cioè chill, chill. Secondo me però, c'è l'atmosfera, è un po' troppo.
2025, and it's aiming for a 2020.
Infatti sono americani, capito? Tutto sempre tutto ai 100 all'ora loro devono fare.
26 release. The 2023 Lords of the Fallen landed pretty well overall and stood out as one of the
Cioè vedi poi loro ti presentano tutto con quella musica qui rock, non hanno ancora cioè vedi invece From Software però fa roba criptica, cioè fammi far le domande, ma ora che anche quello conta un casino, che è una roba che nessuno riesce a imbroccare ancora, a parte quelli di Lies of P per adesso.
stronger Souls-likes in recent years, even if the combat had a
Appena
few
appena.
rough edges that held it back a bit. CI Games seems very aware of that. With the sequel, they're taking what worked, fixing what didn't, and pushing every.
Cioè perché io con quel trailer qui non capisco, cioè sembra un action e tutto. Non mi stai facendo capire, c'è anche quel livello qui, fra, ma calmati però.
Everything further. This one is set 100 years
Però
after
bello.
the first game and continues from one of its endings, so it's not a soft reset, it's a straight follow up. You can expect more weapons, more spells, and a wider mix of enemies, all built around a heavier, bloodier, and more aggressive feel.
Poi credo che adesso salti di brutto,
The
no?
goal isn't just more of the same. They're expanding systems across the board, from the Umbriel mechanic to world lore and the range of starting classes you can pick from. We actually talked with David Vaglialo,
Cos'è? Cos'è?
CI Games creative portfolio strategist at Gamescom last year, and based on that conversation, the team sounds very
Cioè sembra un po' tanto fantasy generico questo qui. E secondo me non riescono a carpire la vera magia, no? Lies of P gli do un 9 fra. È un giocone proprio. Cioè è un giocone. A me manca un trofeo, dobbiamo fare una run e arrivare a prendere una canzone e l'ho platinato.
focused on refinement and scale. They want this sequel to feel bigger and more
Giocone, bro.
confident without losing what made the first game click. There's still no exact release date locked in, but everything points to Lords of the Fallen 2 being a serious step up when it lands sometime in 2026. Phantom
Invece
Blade
2
Zero is an
bellissimo.
upcoming action.
Ecco anche questo. Io per esempio non lo aspetto. Tarco mio fratello. Uhm, allora, è il best Souls-like tranne quelli di From. Cioè perché per me I Souls-like sono Bloodborne, Sekiro e Elden Ring, per dire, perché sono i derivati di Dark Souls e Demon Souls. Quindi poi oltre a quelli, il migliore per adesso è l'Eyes of P, sì. Tipo adesso quel Phantom Blade Zero qui, io non è che lo aspetto che sto male, però son curioso anche di questo qui.
An RPG from S-Game, set to release on September 9th, 2026 for PC and
Hai
PlayStation
capito, non
5.
capisco.
This is the studio's first game on those platforms.
Però anche Wukong, io dicevo. Cioè anche Wukong diceva la stessa roba. Wukong raga sembrava cioè impossibile, impossibile. Io credevo fosse una boss rush perché dicevo: "Fra, ma in che senso 120 boss o quelli che sono?" E a un certo punto anche lì io sto capendo quanto le recensioni in realtà, se son fatte bene, ti aiutano a te nell'approccio del gioco. Perché quel gioco lì aveva talmente tanto mistero che io non mi aspettavo che nella seconda mappa diventava enorme fra. Enorme, cioè io non ero pronto, io credevo di battere un boss dopo l'altro, invece frate era le ultime 4 mappe sono giganti e tu ti fai infatti l'ho disinstallato e l'ho finito tipo 3 o 4 mesi dopo. Neanche finito, sono arrivato all'ultima mappa e ho detto: "Ma ancora un'altra mappa? Togli, non ho più voglia." E devo ancora finirlo. Cioè, stessa cosa in Silksong. Se a me in Silksong mi facevano una recensione dove mi dicevano: "Oh, guarda che il gioco non è come l'1." Non è tranquillino come l'1, cioè inizi, ti vuoi già strappare i capelli, è tarato con una difficoltà più alta, i nemici ti tolgono 2, non ti tolgono 1, però se, i è tutto più vicino, puoi avere robe subito, bla bla bla. E tu ti settavi, invece loro non han detto niente, a me personalmente quel gioco lì m'ha fatto un brutto effetto perché, cioè, io credevo fosse come l'1. Cioè l'1 all'inizio ti accompagna nel chill, le musichine. Ah, qua è tutti i violini, tutto tutto e a me quella roba lì proprio non m'ha fatto andare avanti nel gioco.
And it's been one people haven't stopped talking about since its first showing back in 2024. When it was revealed
Ecco, a me non piacciono queste cose qui, tutte 'ste animazioni qui mentre combatto, cioè non mi stare addosso con tutte 'ste robe qui. Questo è il problema che però tutti quelli che l'han provato dicono che è atomico.
a lot of folks straight up didn't believe what they were seeing. The footage looked so clean and so sharp that people
Ma lo so,
assumed
i
it
plati
had to
di
be
Assassin son
pre-rendered.
bruttissimi.
It wasn't. Once you actually see it in motion, it clicks fast. At a glance, it might look like another fast Souls-style game, but
Ma
that
no,
idea
ma a
doesn't
me
really
mi
hold
sembra una roba tipo Devil May Cry, Bayonetta, una roba così.
up once you play it. The combat feels way closer to character action games like Devil May Cry or Bayonetta. Even that comparison feels a little limiting, honestly. It has its own thing going on. We've played it multiple times, including at Gamescom, and every build has felt better than the last. One big reason the game took longer to
Non lo
finish is
so,
that the team didn't expect this level of interest. What started as a smaller project with 4 weapon types has grown into
cioè io non riesco a capire se è un gameplay o un video, tipo qui. Però c'è la vita. Cazzo di inquadrature sono fra?
something much bigger. The final game is planned to have up to 22 different weapons, each with their own moves and animations. Yes, there are shortcuts in levels and a stamina-like system, but Phantom Blade Zero is not a
Cioè
Souls-like.
tipo qua è bello.
It's a flashy Chinese martial arts action RPG that's fun whether you're a hardcore player or not. Every time I've touched it, it's been a blast, and September 9th can't get here fast enough.
Beh, anche questo cosa ho detto, settembre si proverà.
Mortal Shell 2 is the follow up to Cold Symmetry's Dark Souls like.
Questo son stracurioso, fra l'1 lo aspettavo con ansia quando uscì, ma Vacca che schifezza.
And yeah, this one caught a lot of people off guard. The first Mortal Shell had a strong look, cool lore, and a heavy atmosphere that really worked, but combat was always the weak spot.
Ehm,
It felt stiff at times and didn't have enough depth.
Però il primo era un po' colpa anche che secondo me era il secondo Souls-like dopo Lords of the Fallen, il primo. Cioè, vacca che schifezza quel gioco lì.
To fully carry the
Quello ci
game.
sta.
With Mortal Shell 2, the developers seem very aware of that. The early footage leans hard into variety, more shells, more weapons, more enemy types, and a much nastier overall vibe. The combat shown so far looks faster, bloodier, and more flexible, with less of that clunky feel the original struggled with. Everything takes place in a grim,
Bello fra quel nemico qui però. Oh.
hostile fantasy world that looks just as oppressive as before, if not more. One of the bigger promises here is that Mortal Shell 2 is going open world. That's always a risky move for this genre, but the level design and world layout in the first game were already one of its stronger points. If Cold Symmetry can expand that idea without losing focus, this could work really well. There's still a lot we
Bella
don't know.
Frax.
No firm release date
Buona
yet, just a
serata.
2026 window. But based on what's been shown, this feels like a sequel that's actually trying to fix the right things, instead of just doing more of the same. If you liked the mood of the first game but wanted better combat, this one's worth keeping an eye on.
Questo dici che è meglio di Lords of the Fallen? Crazy fra. Dici anche l'1? Cioè l'1 è meglio di Lords of the Fallen 1, quello mega OG? Quello sì. Ah beh sì, sì, sì. Ma guardi, non lo so fra. Dall'altro Lords of the Fallen non lo so.
The Blood of Dawn
Ecco, questo mi agita un po'.
Walker is a medieval fantasy RPG being made by Rebel Wolves, a studio formed by former The Witcher 3 developers. The game centers on Cohen, a character who's half human and half vampire, and the team is clearly trying to do something a little different with how the story works. The big hook here is time. There's a built
Questi sono ex sviluppatori di The Witcher 3 che hanno fatto questo qui, infatti se vedi il gioco sembra un po' un sequel spirituale. Mio fratello, grazie frate, crazy, buon lavoro bro. Sempre Forza Juve. E in quel gioco qui non esiste differenza tra missioni secondarie e principali e non c'è differenza tra il fallire una missione e, e farcela. Cioè, anche se la fallisci, la storia va avanti con te che fallisci una roba. È come idea sembra crazy, però c'è da vedere come la fanno.
in time system
Sei un vampiro, di giorno sei normale, di notte puoi fare il vampiro, però credo puoi anche fare il vampiro di giorno con delle conseguenze, credo però, eh.
where major story events will happen once enough time passes, whether you're ready or not. Quests don't just sit there waiting forever, and every action you take pushes the clock forward. What's
Tipo come
interesting is
Persona.
that this isn't about failing the game outright. From what the developers have explained, missing objectives or taking too long doesn't end your run. Instead, it shifts how the story plays out and what kind of ending you get. Time works more like a resource you spend. Do you rush key goals or do you slow down and explore, knowing that delay has a cost? That choice seems baked into everything. Cohen's split nature also feeds into how you approach the world. During the day, you can handle situations in more grounded ways, like talking things through or moving openly. At night, his vampire side opens up other paths. You can climb walls, sneak past guards, and lean into stealth and mobility to reach places that would otherwise be blocked. The gameplay they've shown suggests a lot of flexibility, with different solutions depending on how you want to play and when you decide to act. There's no exact release date yet, but The Blood of Dawnwalker is planned for 2026. If I had to guess, it feels like a second half release, but we'll see how it shapes up as they show more. Fable is still one of the biggest questions.
Questo è un po' crazy. Hanno fatto anche l'annuncio ieri, credo. Mi dà un po' di vibe di The Fable 1, eh. C'è da capire fra, c'è da capire, c'è da capire. Potrebbe essere una hit astronomica oppure un fallimento colossale.
Marks hanging over Xbox right now. It's being developed by Playground Games, the studio known for Forza Horizon, and it was first announced all the way back in 2020. Since then, actual gameplay has been pretty hard to come by. That silence only got louder when the game didn't show up at the Xbox Games Showcase during Gamescom 2025, which caught a lot of people off guard. Earlier this year, Fable was officially delayed to 2026, and at this point, most fans are just hoping that's the final delay. The lack of new footage has fueled plenty of rumors. Some people think the early trailers didn't land
Non hanno mica già annunciato la data d'uscita? Poi esce su PlayStation.
quite how Microsoft wanted, and now
Crazy.
the team is holding back until everything feels locked in. Xbox Game Studios leadership has said the game will be worth the wait, clearly trying to ease concerns, but words only go so far when there's nothing new to look at. One interesting detail is the tech behind it. Fable is being built on the Forza Tech engine, which isn't what most people expect for a big fantasy RPG. That alone raises eyebrows, but Playground seems confident they can make it work, and that choice adds another layer of curiosity to the
Poi puoi creare il personaggio, perché sembrava di no, eh.
whole project.
Beh, perché Xbox ha quella politica lì, hanno avuto un'idea, hanno detto: "Togliamo le console, mettiamo il Game Pass", però hanno fallito, perché loro per fare quella roba lì hanno dovuto acquisire tante case di produzione e quindi il valore di guadagno della casa di produzione di un videogioco sono i soldi che ti dà Microsoft. Ti dice: "Io ti stanzio i soldi per fare il gioco e in più ti do tot milioni che già ti guadagni adesso", no, e il gioco va sul Game Pass e poi noi ci splittiamo l'abbonamento. Ma non frega un cazzo a nessuno di quell'abbonamento lì. Quindi loro adesso stanno dando tutti i giochi, le esclusive che tra l'altro non sono esclusive loro, cioè le hanno semplicemente acquisite così cercando di rompere il mercato. Cioè, quindi io acquisisco Activision, Blizzard, Bethesda, Zenimax, però nessuno mi compra l'Xbox, la gente preferisce comprare su Steam, la PlayStation ha dei giochi più belli e quindi io devo comunque Call of Duty lo devo far uscire sulla Play, perché tanto io che ho cioè cosa dico, che Call of Duty esce sull'Xbox, mica mi compra l'Xbox le persone. Fai miliardi sulla Play, quindi non gli ha workato quella roba lì, ma perché effettivamente non ha senso, cioè non ha senso, non ha senso secondo me.
Right now, Fable feels like a game defined by
Infatti i giochi son tutti uguali, fatti per stare nel Game Pass, tutti noiosi perché ti devono spinnare 2 o 3 mesi di abbonamento. È una merda per me però.
anticipation and uncertainty.
Mi
The
scelgo
name
io quello che
carries a
voglio.
lot of weight, and expectations are high. Whether it all comes together in 2026 is the big question, and until we see real gameplay, that mystery isn't going anywhere.
Abbiamo pubblicato un video ieri, ho fatto vedere un gameplay bello, eh.
Solasta 2 is
Oh,
the
questo non
follow-up
vedo
to
l'ora.
Solasta Crown of the
Oddio,
Magister,
marzo
the
12 marzo. Porca frama, quanti giochi escono.
tabletop-style CRPG that came out in 2021.
Ah, ma marzo ehm, la roba tipo l'early access su PC, non mi interessa
And
allora.
quietly built a loyal fan base. It never blew up the way Baldur's Gate 3 did, but a lot of CRPG fans stuck with it because it nailed tactical combat, gave players tons of choices, and stayed very close to actual Dungeons and Dragons
Non
rules.
vedo l'ora bro,
That's the lane Solasta 2 is
questo
still
non vedo
in,
l'ora.
but it's clearly aiming higher
Però uscirà nel 2027 secondo me questo, su Play.
this time. One of the big upgrades is the move to Unreal Engine 5, and yeah, it shows. The game looks way cleaner and more detailed than the first one ever did.
Ma non è vero se c'è una cosa che la Real Engine non fa negli fantasy è rendere more detail la cosa, poi i fantasy più belli sono sempre quelli che non sono in Unreal. Sai che contratti hanno fra questi qui con quelli di Epic, sono tutti obbligati a usare l'Unreal. Bro, infatti tutti i giochi sono uguali.
It on Unity. Lighting, environments, character models, it all feels like a step forward instead of a small tweak. Another huge change is the voice cast. Solasta 2 brings in Deborah Wild, Amelia Tyler, and Ben Starr, which is a serious upgrade in terms of performance and presentation. It's not suddenly trying to outdo Baldur's Gate 3, but it's definitely closing the gap in a way the original never could. If you're the type who loves deep
Questo secondo me sarà una bella gemmina, eh.
turn-based combat, party builds, and careful planning, this is very much still your kind of game.
Sì,
And if you're someone
non vedo
who's
l'ora.
already burned through Baldur's Gate 3 more times than you want to admit and hasn't touched the Divinity games yet, Solasta 2 is an easy recommendation to
tutto.
keep on your radar. Just remember, it's launching in early access on March 12th, not as a full release. You won't see the entire story yet, but there should be a sizable chunk of world and systems to mess with as development continues.
Vediamo il 12.
Fire Emblem Fortune's Weave is a new tactical RPG
Tres.
coming to Nintendo Switch in 2026. It was shown during a Nintendo Direct on September 12th last year, and it
Questo non
marks
mi
the
piace.
18th main game in the Fire Emblem series. At its core, this is still very much Fire Emblem. Turn-based battles play out on grids, positioning matters, and every move feels deliberate. Alongside that, there are story-focused exploration sections that connect directly to what's happening in the plot, instead of
Cioè,
feeling tacked
in realtà non mi piace perché non li ho mai provati, però secondo me se ci metto mano mi agitano.
on. A lot of people liked how tight and polished Fire Emblem engagement
Adesso in questi giorni non so perché c'ho una voglia matta di mettermi tipo nel letto con un anime e giocare a Zelda fra il Breath of the Wild, non so perché, frate, sto impazzendo.
felt in combat, but plenty of fans also felt the story didn't hit as hard as Three Houses. From what we've seen so far, Fortune's Weave looks like it's trying to balance both sides better.
Non lo so.
The trailer gives off the sense that the team paid attention to that feedback and wants stronger characters and story moments without losing the sharp tactical side the series is known for. The structure looks familiar, but the cast and storyline are
Che belli i design dei personaggi, però loro sono infallibili.
completely new,
Sti giapponesi hanno una roba che come fanno, frate?
which should make it easier for
Tutto
new players to
bellissimo.
jump in, while still giving longtime fans something fresh to dig into. It's clearly built on what worked before, just with more focus on giving the story room to breathe. If you've been waiting for another Fire Emblem that feels confident in both its battles and its story, this one is shaping up to be worth watching when it lands sometime in 2026.
Io ho un sonno, raga.
Dragon Quest VII Reimagined is a
questo.
full remake of Dragon
5
Quest VII,
febbraio.
Fragments of the Forgotten Past, from Square Enix. This is actually the second time the game's been remade, following the 3DS version from 2013, with the original launching on PlayStation back in 2000.
Questo potrei
For players
prenderlo.
who don't know the history, Dragon Quest VII was also the first entry in the series to release outside Japan after Dragon Quest IV. This isn't just the old game running cleaner on new hardware. Dragon Quest VII Reimagined is rebuilt with a new look inspired by mini
Quel gioco qui, Dragon Quest, in Giappone è il motivo per cui hanno messo una legge che i giochi devono uscire il venerdì, perché per colpa di Dragon Quest la gente prendeva le vacanze e nessuno andava a lavorare.
miniature dioramas with detailed character models that still stick closely to the classic designs. A lot of the systems have been adjusted to feel smoother too. Random encounters are gone, so you can see enemies and avoid them while exploring. Party members can use auto strategies, and combat moves faster, which helps a lot when dealing with weaker enemies.
Che gioco non... Bro, questo mi fa agitare troppo. Voli.
One of the bigger changes is how
Oddio,
vocations
bro,
work.
guarda che bello.
Each character can use 2 vocations at once, opening up more ways to mix roles and skills. There are also brand new vocations planned for 2026, which gives returning players something new to mess with. That said, some areas from the original game have been cut to keep the story moving at a better pace. It's still a full game, just a tighter one. Dragon Quest VII Reimagined launches on PS5, Xbox Series X and S, Nintendo Switch 2, and Steam on February 5th of this year, and it's aimed at both longtime fans
Guarda i disegni. Poi era Akira Toriyama, no? Disegnava Dragon Quest, no? Quello di Dragon Ball.
and players looking
Cioè, quindi questi qui avevano il gioco con i disegni del gioco, i design li faceva quello di Dragon Ball. Frate, per forza la gente andava in ferie.
for a big, classic-style JRPG with modern touches. Fate Keeper is an upcoming first-person action RPG made by Paraglacial and published by THQ
Prima
Nordic.
persona non mi piace.
It's set in a fantasy world built around old myths, broken
Figa, sono gli stessi che fanno Lords of the Fallen, però.
kingdoms, and the idea that fate itself has gone off the rails. The story follows a warrior known as the Fate Keeper, someone tied to fixing a world where ancient powers are waking back up.
Però se è fatta bene la prima persona fantasy, ti dico che sta iniziando a non dispiacermi, eh. Tipo Oblivion, sai che non è male giocarlo in prima persona, proprio è bello. Mi sto giocando offline Oblivion, la remaster perché voglio platinarlo, così non ci devo mai più giocare, che quello c'ha il platino facile. E mi sto facendo piano piano le missioni, una dopo l'altra. Adesso sto facendo la missione dei guerrieri. Sai che non è male, fra. L'arco, le magie, ma anche le spadate è bello, fra. Se il feeling è fatto bene è bello.
And long-buried magic is starting to warp everything around it.
Ah,
Ruins are active again, old forces are pushing back into the open,
figa, sai che questo agita. Quando esce
and the
adesso.
whole place feels like it's slowly falling apart. The big focus here is combat and how much freedom it gives you. Fights aren't just about swinging a sword or tossing a spell. You can use the space around you in smart ways. Knock enemies off cliffs, slam them into traps, or mix magic with weapon hits to get big, messy results. It's very
Messi.
hands-on and physical, and every fight lets you experiment a bit. Exploration is a huge part of it too. The world is packed with hidden rooms, relics, and objects that react to your powers, so poking around actually pays off. A lot of the combat style takes clear
Ma solo su PC esce però.
inspiration from Dark Messiah of Might and Magic, with that same mix of brutal melee and clever spell use. Visually, Fatekeeper leans into a grounded fantasy look. Think misty caves, ruined temples, and bright forests, all pushed by Unreal Engine lighting to give the world a heavy mood. The game is planned to hit early access in 2026, starting on PC.
Porca troia, fra sto early access.
Showa American Story is a
Che
2026
cos'è?
game from Netcom Games that's hard to compare to anything else. It's billed as a post-apocalyptic romance RPG mixed with alternate history and full-on period drama. And yeah, it's as strange as that sounds. The trailers don't hide it either. This thing is loud, weird, and very proud of it. The story centers on a girl who comes back from the dead in a ruined America filled with zombies, monsters, and a bunch of very colorful human survivors. The tone swings between emotional and completely unhinged, often in the same scene. The game openly leans into 80s pop culture with a heavy love for B-movie vibes and over-the-top style. It's flashy, dramatic, and clearly not trying to be subtle. Netcom Games describes it as a love letter to that era, and it shows in the music, visuals, and characters. Everything feels exaggerated on purpose. Right now, details on systems and mechanics are still pretty light,
Sembra tipo uno Yakuza.
but based on what's been shown, this looks more about the ride than strict realism or tight rules.
Cioè, questo era è al nono posto. Quanto gli è andato per metterlo al nono posto, scusami.
It was originally planned for late last year but got pushed back, and there's still no exact release date. What we do know is that Showa American Story is locked in for 2026, and if you're into strange ideas and campy settings that don't take themselves too seriously, this one is very hard to ignore. Bloodstained: The Scarlet Engagement is a new entry in the Bloodstained
Oh, cos'è sta?
series and a follow-up to the events around Bloodstained: Ritual of the Night. Ritual of the Night came out in 2019, and a lot of people saw it as a modern take on classic Castlevania. Side-scrolling action, big focus on exploration, and a ton of wandering through castles and strange labs while fighting demons and other ugly things. That
Bellissimo.
core idea is still very much
Su Switch questo secondo me te lo godi un casino.
the backbone here. The Scarlet Engagement goes further back in time with a prequel story set in 16th century England. The main threat this time is a demon lord named Elias, and the game centers around stopping his grip on the land. One of the big promises is scale. The map is supposed to be much larger, and the world changes as time moves forward. There's a full day and night cycle, and light and darkness shift as the hours pass, which affects how areas behave and
Bello.
how you move through them. Another major change is the buddy system. Instead of sticking to one character, you're controlling two at once. Leo and Alex each have their own abilities, and you can swap between them on the fly to solve fights or get through tricky spots. It sounds like the game is built around using both characters together instead of treating one like backup. There's still no exact release date, but Bloodstained: The Scarlet Engagement is currently planned to land sometime in 2026. If Ritual of the Night clicked with you,
Sì, e quel video qui non sembrava di un gioco così.
This feels like a more ambitious swing at that same style.
Oddio, se non dormo muoio.
Monster Hunter Stories 3 Twisted Reflection is the next
Non mi piace,
turn-based
non l'ho mai
RPG
provato, non è
set
che
in the
non mi
Monster
piace, non l'ho mai
Hunter
provato.
universe. Unlike the main series, this one isn't about chasing monsters down with oversized weapons. This story's games focus on being a rider, forming bonds with monsters like Rathalos and Tigrex, and building a team instead of hunting them for parts. In Twisted Reflection, the setup leans even harder into that idea. You're part of a group of rangers whose job is to protect endangered monsters and help fix damaged environments. Instead of slaying creatures, you're searching for eggs. Those eggs
No, Monster Hunter ci ho provato a giocarci, ma non è la mia vibe.
hatch into monster partners, and once you've helped restore an area, monsters can be released back into the wild to rebuild the ecosystem.
Io
That loop
ho un
is the
sonno
core of how the world
non vedo l'ora
opens
di
up
dormire.
and how you grow stronger. Combat sticks with the turn-based JRPG style the series is known for. Battles are more about planning and understanding monster behavior than raw reflexes. The tone is also very different from mainline Monster Hunter. It's lighter, more colorful, and focused on your relationship with the creatures rather than constant combat pressure. If Monster Hunter Wilds didn't fully land for you, or if you've just been spending your time back in Monster Hunter World, this is a very different lane for the series. Monster Hunter Stories 3 Twisted Reflection is scheduled to release on March 13th this year, and it's a solid pick if you want something familiar but calmer inside the Monster Hunter world. Code Vein 2 is the next entry in Bandai Namco's anime-style Souls-like series, and it's landing very soon. This one's out first on the calendar, with a full release on January 30th, and depending on the edition, you can get
Cos'è
it
questo?
early starting January 27th.
Questo lo
That
giochiamo,
alone
raga.
makes it an easy one to keep an eye on. The bigger deal, though, is that Code Vein 2 keeps doing that rare combo of anime style with combat that actually holds up. A lot of anime games look cool but fall apart once the fighting starts. This series doesn't have that problem. Combat still has that tight Souls-like feel, but with faster movement and more flexibility. The blood code system is the big hook again, and it's still one of the coolest class systems out there. You're not locked into one role. You can swap builds on the fly, change how you fight, and adjust to different enemies without restarting your character. It makes experimenting feel natural instead
Questo non
of
vedo
risky.
l'ora, raga.
They've also made tweaks to the blood code system compared to the first game. Some of those changes look promising, some raise questions.
Cosa esce
And it's one of those
settimana
things
prossima?
we'll really need hands-on time with to see how it shakes out. But the core idea is still there, and it's still strong. If you like tough combat, stylish characters, and systems that let you play your way, Code Vein 2 is shaping up to be a solid start to the year. Diablo 4 Lord of Hatred is the second expansion for Diablo 4, and it pushes the story forward in a big way. This
Preso mai-
expansion finally brings players face to face with Mephisto, the Lord of Hatred himself, one of the prime evils that's been looming over the game since launch. Story-wise, this is a major moment for the series, not just a side chapter. The expansion adds a brand new region called the Ancient Land of Skosglen, giving players a fresh area to explore, fight through, and loot. Along with that, the Paladin class is making a return. That alone is going to make a lot of longtime Diablo fans very happy. If you've pre-ordered the expansion, you can already access the Paladin, and Blizzard has also confirmed there's another class coming that hasn't been revealed yet. On the systems side, Lord of Hatred is also aiming to smooth out and improve the endgame.
Scusate, raga,
More
scusate.
variety, better pacing, and changes meant to keep high-level play interesting for longer. That's been one of the big talking points around Diablo 4, so seeing it addressed here is a good sign. Diablo 4 Lord of Hatred launches on April 28, 2026, and for anyone still invested in Diablo, it's shaping up to be a pretty important update.
Boh, secondo me in quelle classifiche qui mettono i giochi più belli all'inizio che sanno che tutti guardano il video e alla fine mettono i più marci.
7 years after the first game, and this time the focus moves away from Jesse Faden and over to her younger brother, Dylan. He wakes up from a long coma and quickly finds out the hiss problem never really went away, it just spread. Instead of being locked inside
Ah, questo è il seguito di Control?
the oldest house, the mess has leaked out into Manhattan. The city itself is warped, broken, and full of that familiar, unsettling control weirdness. Buildings twist. Award-winning Control revealed
Sì,
at the Game
Control
Awards,
Resonant. Questo
clearly
invece
inspired by games like Mass Effect. Iris
questo
Reborn
sembra
is a
carino, eh.
story-focused sci-fi action RPG clearly inspired by games like Mass
Questo raga mi sa che è Day One.
Effect. You play as a Pinkwater security mercenary whose short break on the asteroid Eros goes bad fast and pulls them into a much bigger conspiracy. You'll create and customize your own captain, then build and lead a crew of
Nuovo Mass
specialists as
Effect.
things spiral outward.
Va bene, poi?
With a new gameplay trailer and a clear
Neanche se mi paghi.
2026, those earlier games weren't perfect, but the combat was
Vabbè, del Neo 3 lo prendo Day One e lo porteremo in live. Basta raga, non ce la faccio più. Giuro, ho bisogno di riposarmi. È il for the bag forever.